Hi, my name is Dr. Marizana, and today we're going to look at the three social theorists in sociology. These are Karl Marx, Emile Durkheim, and Max Weber. Karl Marx is a prominent social theorist, and his influence was felt widely in various academic circles, including economics as well as sociology. This video is focusing on sociology. We will look at his ideas in terms of how it influenced society. Karl Marx was a conflict theorist, which meant that he saw society as being in constant conflict as the result of class structure. Marx stratified society into different classes and believed capitalism was to blame for the suffering of the working class. The proletariat, or the working class, and the bourgeoisie, those who controlled the means of production, according to Marx, were always in constant conflict, and he blamed capitalism for this conflict. According to Marx, capitalism is exploitative, and those who are rich will get richer, and those who are poorer will remain poor because of this class division. Capitalism alienates workers from the products they are manufacturing, and the goods that they produced are worth more than what they are paid. For Marx, he believed a revolution needs to take place for there to be equality in society, and workers should rise up and overthrow those who control them. He determined this in his book he wrote with Friedrich Engels called The Communist Manifesto, in which he believed that economy should be centralized, state-owned, and wealth should be shared among the populace. Karl Marx was very controversial for his time, and many people initially, especially in academic circles, did not believe that his theory would have any impact in society. Communists and Karl Marx's ideas was very controversial at the time. And although his work was influential, many other scholars and academics at the time didn't believe that his theories would have actual influence in society. This, however, was not the case, as communism was employed in Russia as well as other countries. Although one can argue that his ideas had traction, it was never actually successful in any of these countries. Karl Marx's ideas were based on conflict, and the conflict part of his study believed that a revolution needs to take place. Let's now move on to discuss some of Emile Durkheim's ideas in trying to understand society. We have to remember that these scholars were writing at a time of the Industrial Revolution in Europe. They were trying to understand how and why society has changed as quickly as it did, and how that influenced people's everyday lives. Emile Durkheim wrote during the same period as Karl Marx did, but he looked at society from a different perspective. He wanted to distinguish sociology as a science and therefore defined a concept that he called a social fact. He argued that broader social factors, including the degree of social cohesion, were influencing people's degree of happiness and well-being. One of his most important studies was on the different rates of suicide in different social strata. He was trying to understand why there had been an increase in the suicide rates during the Industrial Revolution and why it was happening in particular countries. His study was based in the UK and in Denmark. One of his main findings was the idea that social cohesion leads to an increase in discontent in society. A decrease in social cohesion leads to an increase in discontent in society. Social cohesion influenced by society by becoming more secular, and this he linked to the role that religion played in creating social cohesion. The more cohesive a society, the less likely that suicides will increase. But if a society is not cohesive, there's a high probability that more suicides will occur. This sense of disconnectedness, alienation, loneliness, and isolation, Durkheim termed anomie. The more social cohesive societies are, the less anomie exists. And this occurs more frequently in modern societies where people are less integrated. For many, suicide is seen as an individual act and a personal trouble. But Durkheim showed through his study, that suicide is not a personal act or a personal trouble, but as a social fact or a social problem. In other words, it has social, not individual causes. Suicide for him then is not an individual choice that you take, but rather there are institutions and social elements outside of you as an individual which influences your behavior. He was therefore what is termed a structural functionist. In other words, he believed that society and different institutions in society need to function optimally for the whole of society to be in equilibrium. If one institution is not in tune, it influences all the other institutions in society. So we can think of institutions as religion, education, government, civil society. In Durkheim's world, all of these would function optimally and there would be a high sense of social cohesion. He placed a huge importance on the values, norms in society and argued that if these aren't in place, the whole of society will fall apart. So whereas Marx considered class and conflict as important, Emile Durkheim saw institutions and the functioning of institutions as important. Let's move on to discussing some of Max Weber's ideas. Max Weber asked the question, why did capitalism emerge in Europe and not elsewhere? In 1904, he wrote a book called The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, in which he argued that Western capitalism relates to cultural systems of norms, values, and beliefs that regulate the conduct and actions of people. Western capitalism, according to Durkheim, relates to cultural systems of norms, values, and beliefs that regulate the conduct and the actions of people. This is the foundation of the cultural system of religion, and therefore Weber saw a link between religion and capitalism. Capitalism is based on the pursuit of profit and the accumulation of wealth, and Weber links this to Protestantism, where the values and norms is based on early entrepreneurial capitalists. A specific type of religion, Calvinism, is central to Weber's analysis. He argues that Calvinists believe in predestination, the idea that God has already chosen those who would go to heaven. But people on earth don't know who those chosen few are, and therefore live according to the spirit of capitalism or according to the values of Calvinism in terms of working hard, having a modest lifestyle and saving. All of this feeds into a successful individual experience of the entrepreneurial capitalist. Weber also developed the idea of meaning or verstehen in understanding people's experiences. Whereas Marx looked at class structure, Weber was interested in micro-sociology, in other words, in the individual meaning that people give to their behaviors. For Weber, humans are meaning-making agents, and the meaning that they give to things will differ depending on their personal and social circumstances. He was interested in how individuals experience social divisions rather than the divisions themselves, and developed the idea of symbolic interactionalism, which emphasized the viewpoint of how the individual relates to society and how the society influences the individual. One of Max Weber's main ideas then was the idea of the link between capitalism, the Protestant ethic, as well as bureaucracy. For Weber, capitalism is rational, and it's based on rational action. And this rational action influences institutions that have become extremely bureaucratic. Because most institutions are bureaucratic, the individual and the meaning that individuals can give and the influence they could have on institutions is minimal. In other words, Max Weber argued that the sense of agency for individuals become less and less the more modern and the bigger influence capitalism had. He said that the iron cage exists in many societies where individuals are trapped behind the cages of capitalism. All three of these theorists, Karl Marx, Emile Durkheim and Max Weber, still have an influence in society today, and that's why they're relevant in a sociology course. We're living in a time where the technological revolution is taking place. So how could we understand the class system during this era in which we're living? How could we understand social cohesion during this era that we're living in? And how could we understand individuals and the meaning that individuals give to institutions and the bureaucratic nature of institutions in this era that we're living in? These three theorists, therefore, are still applicable in today's society. This could be because of the technological revolution. These three theorists are still relevant in today's society. If we apply them to the technological revolution, we can see how Karl Marx, Max Weber, and Emile Durkheim still influence our behaviors today. Karl Marx in his class system could be applied to how we experience our own everyday life. So too could Emile Durkheim in terms of understanding social cohesion. and Max Weber in terms of understanding the role that individual agency plays in institutions. Thank you for watching this video on social theorists. You'll be surprised how useful these theories could be in your everyday life.